The afternoon sun dipped low over the cul-de-sac, its rays stretching across the neat lawns and pristine sidewalks that had made Willow Creek Estates the pride of its homeowners association. I'd moved here with my daughter, Lily, in hopes of giving her a quiet, safe environment where she could heal, where her wheelchair and her soft laughter wouldn't draw the cruelty we'd known elsewhere. Lily was 10, her legs paralyzed from an accident 2 years back, but her spirit was stronger than anyone I knew. She painted, wrote stories, and smiled at neighbors even when they ignored her. But in Willow Creek, not everyone smiled back. Chief among them was Karen Holloway, the HOA president, a woman whose obsession with order was matched only by her disdain for anyone she deemed out of place. From the moment we arrived, Karen had found something to criticize. Our ramp was unsightly. Lily's flower pots by the porch cluttered common view. Even the sound of her laughter one summer evening had disrupted the peace. I'd filed complaints, but her grip on the HOA board was ironclad. She ruled with intimidation, and most neighbors stayed silent. Still, I never thought her hatred would turn violent. That changed one chilly October evening. Lily had rolled outside to watch the neighborhood kids decorate pumpkins. She clapped as they painted, cheering every crooked smile and messy triangle. Karen, standing across the street with her ever-present clipboard, glared at her as though her joy was an offense. I was inside finishing dinner when I heard it, the sudden sharp crack of a gunshot. My heart froze. I ran to the door and saw Lily's wheelchair tipped on its side, her small body trembling as blood spread across her sleeve. In Karen's hands was a handgun, still smoking. Teach her not to loiter where she doesn't belong. Karen shrieked, eyes wild. For a moment, the world went silent. Children screamed, parents rushed forward, and I dropped to my knees, clutching Lily as she cried out in pain. Rage, horror, disbelief all warred within me. But one truth was clear. Karen had crossed the line from cruelty into attempted murder. Sirens wailed in the distance as neighbors stood frozen, no longer able to ignore what she had become. What Karen didn't know, though, was that Lily wasn't just my daughter. She was also the niece of the city's most powerful ally, the mayor himself. And Karen had just made an enemy she couldn't bully into silence. The ambulance rushed Lily to the hospital as flashing lights bathed our street in red and blue. My hands were still shaking, covered in her blood, as paramedics worked frantically to stabilize her. Neighbors gathered in stunned silence, whispering, gasping, but none dared go near Karen, who stood stiffly on her porch as though she'd done nothing wrong. The officers swarmed her, shouting for her to drop the weapon, but her arrogance hadn't faltered. "This is my neighborhood," she barked. "I have the right to enforce order." The sheer audacity left even the officers momentarily stunned before they cuffed her. Meanwhile, I rode in the ambulance with Lily, holding her hand as her lips trembled. "Mom, it hurts," she whispered, her voice weak. My tears fell freely, but I forced myself to stay strong. "You're gonna be okay, baby. I promise." At the hospital, doctors rushed her into surgery. I sat alone in the waiting room, staring at the sterile walls while rage and fear clawed at my chest. Then my phone buzzed. It was Mayor Anthony Green, my late sister's husband, Lily's uncle. He had always adored Lily, spoiling her with books and paints, seeing the brilliance in her that others overlooked. I'd hesitated to involve him in our HOA troubles, wanting to fight our own battles. But now the choice was gone. What happened? His voice thundered before I could even speak. Word had already traveled. The news channels were buzzing with reports. HOA President shoots child in Willow Creek. I told him everything, how Karen had harassed us, how neighbors turned a blind eye, how she finally snapped and fired at Lily. The line went silent. Then his voice dropped, cold and deliberate. "She won't get away with this." Within hours, the hospital was swarming with city officials, detectives, and press. Reporters shoved microphones at me, demanding statements, while Anthony's team worked to secure Lily's privacy. Karen was already in custody, But whispers of her wealthy husband's legal connections spread quickly. I knew she would try to twist the story, paint Lily as a nuisance, me as negligent. She had power, influence, and a history of silencing dissenters in the neighborhood. But this time, she had underestimated her opponent. When Anthony arrived at the hospital, cameras flashed as the mayor himself stormed through the halls. He embraced me tightly, his jaw clenched with fury. "She shot my niece," he growled to the press, "and I will make sure justice is served, no matter how deep I have to dig." For the first time since the nightmare began, I saw fear in Karen's eyes on the evening news as she was dragged into court. She finally realized this wasn't just another HOA squabble. This was war, and the city itself was watching. The courtroom was packed when Karen's arraignment began. Reporters filled the benches, cameras lined the back, and neighbors who once stayed silent now shuffled nervously in their seats. I sat at the front beside Anthony, gripping his hand while my attorney laid out the charges: attempted murder, reckless endangerment, and unlawful discharge of a firearm. Karen, in her crisp beige suit, looked more like a smug CEO than a criminal defendant. She smirked, as if the entire ordeal was beneath her. Her lawyer spun a tale of self-defense, claiming Lily had startled her, that she thought she was in danger. The sheer absurdity of it made me want to scream. How could anyone see a wheelchair-bound child as a threat? The jury's eyes narrowed, unimpressed, but Karen remained unfazed. She whispered confidently to her husband seated behind her, his expression as cold as hers. Then the prosecution played the video. A neighbor had captured the incident on their phone. The sound of Karen yelling, the flash of the gun, Lily's scream as she fell. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. The mayor stood, his voice booming across the chamber. "That is my niece. That is a 10-year-old girl who was targeted for being different. And this community will not tolerate monsters hiding behind HOA bylaws to justify cruelty." The case became a national headline overnight. Social media erupted with outrage. Activists demanded HOA reforms. Parents rallied outside the courthouse, and petitions spread like wildfire. For years, Karen had been a tyrant in her gated kingdom, but now her kingdom was crumbling. Neighbors who once feared her began testifying against her. Stories of threats, fines, and bullying surfaced. Her perfect image was unraveling. But Karen was not done fighting. Out on bail, she launched a media campaign claiming she was the victim of political persecution because she dared to enforce HOA standards. She painted herself as a martyr while her supporters shouted about rights and overreach. It was a grotesque performance, but one thing she hadn't counted on was the strength of Lily's voice. After weeks of recovery, Lily appeared on live television, her arm still bandaged, her wheelchair beside her. She spoke softly, but her words cut deeper than any accusation. "I just wanted to watch the other kids play. I never thought I'd be punished for being different." Tears streamed down the faces of viewers nationwide. Karen could spin all the lies she wanted, but against the innocence of a child, her empire was collapsing. The weeks dragged into months, and while Lily slowly healed, the fight for justice only grew fiercer. Karen's allies tried every trick in the book, delaying hearings, filing countersuits, painting us as agitators who disrupted neighborhood harmony. They even claimed Lily's presence violated HOA landscaping codes because her wheelchair ramp altered the uniform aesthetic. The cruelty was unrelenting, but each move only fueled public outrage. Anthony used his position carefully, ensuring due process while rallying lawmakers to examine the unchecked power of HOAs. Committees formed, hearings were scheduled, and Willow Creek Estates became the epicenter of a national debate. What began as a personal tragedy had sparked a movement. People across the country shared their own stories of HOA abuse, of being fined for gardens, harassed for decorations, or discriminated against for disabilities. Through it all, Lily became the face of resilience. She refused to be silenced, speaking at community events, telling children that kindness mattered more than rules. Her courage turned her into a symbol, and soon the slogan spread, "We are all Lily. Protesters carried it on banners outside Karen's court dates, while artists painted murals of Lily in cities across the state. Karen, once untouchable, now found herself besieged. Her neighbors voted to dissolve the HOA board entirely, stripping her of her title. Her home, once the beacon of power on the block, now sat vandalized with signs reading justice for Lily. Still, she clung to arrogance, insisting she be vindicated. The trial reached its climax on a stormy spring morning. I sat with Lily, now stronger, beside me as Karen's final defense collapsed under the weight of testimony, evidence, and public fury. The jury deliberated only an hour before returning with the verdict, guilty on all counts. Karen's face drained of color as the judge sentenced her to 15 years without parole. Gasps erupted, then cheers from the crowd. Justice at last had spoken. But for me, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about change. I looked at Lily, her small hand clutching mine, and I vowed that no other parent would endure this nightmare. Anthony promised sweeping reforms, HOA oversight laws, protections for the disabled, accountability for abuse of power. Karen thought she had silenced Lily forever. Instead, she had given her the loudest voice in the city. With Karen behind bars, the story might have ended, but in reality, it was only the beginning. Lily's bravery became a rallying cry, not just for HOA reform, but for children with disabilities everywhere. Invitations poured in for her to speak at schools, at city events, even at the state capitol. She accepted each with a humility that melted hearts. Anthony, standing proudly at her side, often reminded people, "She is not just my niece. She is proof that courage comes in small packages." The city council passed the Lily Act, banning discriminatory HOA practices and ensuring wheelchair accessibility standards across all communities. Newspapers hailed it as a turning point. Meanwhile, Lily's paintings, once a private joy, gained attention. Galleries displayed her work, vivid bursts of color, hope, and resilience. She titled one piece "Unbroken," showing a tree growing strong despite being struck by lightning. It sold for thousands, proceeds donated to children's hospitals. But the scars remained. Some nights, Lily still woke trembling from nightmares of that October evening. I held her, whispering that she was safe now, and though justice had been served, the pain Karen caused could never fully disappear. Yet, Lily never let bitterness define her. "We can't let hate win, Mom," she told me once. "If we forgive, we're stronger." The years that followed brought healing, but also transformation. Willow Creek, once notorious for Karen's iron fist, became a model of inclusivity. Neighbors, ashamed of their silence, now rallied around Lily, planting gardens in her honor, volunteering at disability centers, and teaching their children the power of kindness. Anthony's reforms spread statewide, then nationally. Soon, HOAs across the country faced stricter regulations, and the phrase "don't be a Karen" took on new weight in legal debates. Karen herself languished in prison, her appeals denied, her empire gone. Occasionally her name surfaced in tabloids, but the world had moved on. Lily grew stronger every day. Her wheelchair became not a symbol of limitation, but of determination. She even joined adaptive sports, racing across tracks with a grin that defied every memory of that night. Watching her, I realized Karen hadn't broken her. She'd forged her into something unshakable. On Lily's 16th birthday, the city held a surprise celebration in her honor. Streets were lined with banners, crowds cheered, and Anthony declared it Lily Green Day. Tears blurred my vision as my daughter, once the trembling child I carried from a bloodstained sidewalk, now rolled confidently onto a stage to thunderous applause. She spoke with a voice clear and steady. "I was hurt once because someone couldn't see past my wheelchair. But today I stand, no, I roll before you to say, we are all more than what people see. We are strength. We are courage. And we are unstoppable." The crowd roared, and I knew in that moment that Karen's bullet hadn't silenced Lily. It had sparked a movement. My daughter, the mayor's niece, was no longer just a victim. She was a leader, And the world would remember her name not for the cruelty she endured, but for the hope she inspired.